Rain pelted the metal roof of the dilapidated auction house in rural Virginia, creating a melancholy rhythm that matched the mood inside. Olivia Mitchell pulled her jacket tighter as she navigated through the crowd of traders, breeders, and casual buyers. At 32, the former equestrian competitor still carried herself with the straight-backed poise of someone who had once danced with champions across show rings throughout the East Coast. The auction was winding down, most of the valuable horses having already found new owners. The remaining animals were the ones nobody wanted, too old, too wild, or too broken. That's when Olivia saw him, standing in the back corner of the holding area, a skeletal chestnut stallion with patches of hair missing and open sores dotting his once powerful frame. His head hung low, his breathing labored and raspy. Even from a distance, Olivia could see the infection crusting around his dull eyes and the unnatural way he distributed his weight, barely touching his right hind hoof to the ground. People whisked past the stallion's pen without a second glance. Olivia overheard snippets of conversation as she slowly approached. "He's not worth the bullet it would take to put him down. Probably got every disease in the book. What a waste of a stall." Her brother Marcus appeared at her shoulder, immediately shaking his head when he saw where she was headed. This wasn't part of their plan. They had come for a healthy trail horse, something steady and reliable for their small farm. The auctioneer's voice crackled over the speakers, announcing the final lot of the day. Number 42, no registered name, approximately 8 years old, unknown history. The stallion was led into the ring, each step clearly painful as he limped across the sawdust. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter spread through the remaining crowd. Someone in the back called out that they'd give $5 for dog food. The auctioneer sighed heavily, not even bothering with his typical rapid-fire delivery. Olivia felt Marcus's hand on her arm, a silent warning. But something in the stallion's eyes caught her attention. Behind the pain and exhaustion, she glimpsed a flicker of something familiar, the unmistakable spirit of a fighter, buried beneath layers of suffering. When their eyes met across the auction ring, Olivia felt a connection that defied explanation. Her hand raised before she could second-guess herself. The auctioneer's eyebrows shot up in surprise as he called out her bid, ridiculously low, but still the only offer on the table. Marcus hissed in her ear about veterinary bills and the risk of bringing disease to their other animals. But Olivia couldn't look away from those eyes. Within moments the gavel fell, and lot number 42 belonged to her. As she approached her new acquisition, the stallion flinched at her outstretched hand. Olivia whispered softly, making a silent promise. No one had believed in this horse, but she saw beyond his broken body to the champion hiding within. She had no idea how their story would unfold, or that this impulsive decision would change both their lives forever. The old trailer rattled down the country roads as Olivia kept glancing in her rear-view mirror, her heart pounding with each jolt and bump. Inside, the skeletal chestnut stallion struggled to maintain his balance, his weakened legs trembling beneath him. She had decided to name him Phoenix, a creature meant to rise from ashes, though at this moment, he looked far more like the ashes than the mythical bird. Marcus drove ahead in his truck, his disapproval evident even from a distance. The rain had subsided to a gentle mist, painting the Virginia countryside in watercolor grays that matched the uncertainty clouding Olivia's mind. When they finally arrived at the small farm, Phoenix refused to exit the trailer. His eyes, clouded with fear and pain, darted frantically at every movement. It took nearly an hour of patient coaxing before he took his first trembling steps onto their property. Under the harsh light of day, Phoenix's condition appeared even more dire than it had in the dim auction house. His ribs protruded like barrel staves beneath his dull, patchy coat, open sores wept along his withers and flanks, and a thick yellow discharge crusted around his nostrils. With each labored breath came an alarming wheeze that resonated from deep within his chest. Most concerning was his right hind leg, which he barely allowed to touch the ground. When Olivia carefully ran her hand down his flank, she felt unnatural heat radiating from the joint, and Phoenix flinched away with surprising strength for such a weakened animal. That night, he refused water and the special mash Olivia prepared, standing motionless in the corner of his stall, as if waiting for the inevitable end. Dr. Peterson arrived early the next morning, his weathered face growing grimmer with each examination. Blood tests, x-rays, and a thorough physical assessment painted a bleak picture. Severe malnutrition had compromised Phoenix's immune system, allowing respiratory infection to take hold. The mysterious lameness stemmed from an old fracture that had healed improperly, likely causing chronic pain for years. Multiple skin infections festered across his body, and his teeth showed signs of neglect that would require extensive work. The veteran veterinarian removed his gloves with a heavy sigh, advising Olivia that euthanasia might be the most humane option. The cost of treatment would be astronomical, with no guarantee of success. The stallion's suffering was profound, and recovery, if possible at all, would be lengthy and painful. Marcus nodded in solemn agreement, already calculating the financial burden this broken horse represented. But Olivia saw something the others missed. As the vet discussed Phoenix's fate, the stallion's eyes followed her movements across the barn, a silent plea that transcended his physical brokenness. In that moment, Olivia made her decision. She would give Phoenix what no one else had offered, a chance. The road ahead would be difficult, possibly heartbreaking, but something deep within told her this forgotten horse deserved to know kindness before the end, whatever that end might be. Dawn broke across the small Virginia farm, bathing the weathered barn in golden light. As Olivia approached Phoenix's stall with a bucket of warm mash, the stallion's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. He scrambled backward, pressing himself against the far wall, his entire body trembling despite the obvious pain it caused. His injured leg, his eyes, wide with terror, tracked her every movement as if expecting punishment for simply existing. Olivia set the bucket down and retreated, watching from a distance as Phoenix remained frozen in fear long after she had gone. This pattern repeated for days. Each approach triggered panic. Each raised hand caused him to flinch violently. During a careful grooming session, Olivia discovered the true extent of Phoenix's trauma hidden beneath his growing coat. Thin white lines crisscrossed his shoulders and flanks, old scars from what could only be whip marks. A circular scar on his side bore the unmistakable pattern of a cigarette burn. Most disturbing was the collection of marks around his mouth and eyes, evidence of a harsh bit and tight nosebands used to force compliance. The physical wounds had healed, but the psychological damage ran far deeper. Olivia developed a new approach. She began spending hours simply sitting on a stool outside Phoenix's stall, reading aloud from her favorite novels. She never looked directly at him, never made sudden movements. Day after day, she maintained this quiet presence, allowing Phoenix to observe her without pressure or expectation. Marcus thought she had lost her mind, wasting precious time with a horse that might never recover. But Olivia persisted, believing in the power of patience. The first breakthrough came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Phoenix had been watching Olivia from his corner, his ears slightly more relaxed than usual. When she placed the feed bucket in his stall and stepped back, he hesitated for only a moment before cautiously approaching the food. For the first time, he began eating while she remained nearby. Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes but remained perfectly still, not wanting to shatter this fragile moment of progress. Weeks passed with agonizing slowness. The veterinarian continued treatment for Phoenix's physical ailments, surprised by his will to survive despite the grim prognosis. Each day brought microscopic improvements. The morning Phoenix stretched his neck toward Olivia's outstretched hand, sniffing her palm before accepting a slice of apple. The afternoon he allowed her to touch his neck for 3 full seconds before pulling away. The evening he nickered softly when he heard her footsteps approaching the barn. These small victories might have seemed insignificant to anyone else, but Olivia recognized them for what they were: monumental acts of courage from a horse who had every reason to distrust humans forever. On the 47th day, as sunset painted the barn in shades of amber and gold, Phoenix walked voluntarily to the stall door where Olivia stood. Their eyes met, and for the first time, his gaze held no fear. Instead, there was something new emerging from the darkness of his past, the faintest glimmer of trust. Summer warmth bathed the Virginia countryside as Phoenix grazed cautiously in the small paddock. 3 months of intensive care had transformed the skeletal stallion into a recognizable horse again. His coat had regained some shine, the open sores had healed, and his respiratory infection had finally cleared with aggressive treatment. Yet despite all progress, the mystery of his right hind leg remained unsolved. The pronounced lameness persisted, sometimes improving slightly, but never disappearing. On bad days, Phoenix barely touched the hoof to the ground, his face tight with pain that no medication seemed to fully address. Olivia watched from the fence, concern etching deeper lines around her eyes. The mounting stack of veterinary bills in her office drawer testified to her determination, each invoice representing another attempt to solve the puzzle of Phoenix's condition. Peterson had exhausted his expertise, referring them to an equine specialist at the university clinic 2 hours away. The trailer ride had been traumatic for Phoenix, stirring old anxieties, but Olivia knew they needed answers. The specialist clinic conducted extensive tests over 2 grueling days: digital radiographs, ultrasounds, and finally an advanced MRI revealed what previous examinations had missed. Phoenix wasn't suffering from a typical orthopedic issue, but a rare neurological condition affecting the nerves in his right hind leg. The MRI showed evidence of an old trauma that had damaged his spinal column, likely from a fall or accident years ago. Whatever treatment he had or hadn't received then had allowed the condition to progress until permanent nerve damage had occurred. The team of specialists delivered their verdict with clinical detachment. The damage was irreversible. Phoenix would never fully regain normal function in that leg. Management, rather than cure, was the only option. And even then, the prognosis for long-term comfort was questionable. One young veterinarian suggested that Olivia consider the quality of life issues, his implication clear though unspoken. Marcus was more direct when she returned home with Phoenix and the devastating news. The practical older brother pointed out the financial reality. She had already spent her savings and taken a second mortgage on the farm. The mounting costs were unsustainable for a horse that experts deemed beyond help. Even the kindest neighbors and fellow horsemen shook their heads in sympathy, suggesting that sometimes the most humane choice was the hardest one. Alone in her kitchen that night, surrounded by veterinary reports and a precarious stack of medical bills, Olivia refused to accept defeat. Her laptop glowed in the darkness as she researched alternatives the specialists hadn't considered: acupuncture, therapeutic ultrasound, water treadmill therapy, Eastern herbal treatments, specialized chiropractic techniques. Each possibility led to another, forming a web of hope where conventional medicine had offered none. As dawn broke, Olivia finally closed her computer and walked to the barn. Phoenix greeted her with a soft nicker, pressing his once fearful face against her shoulder in a gesture of trust that made her resolve strengthen. She wouldn't give up on him. If traditional medicine couldn't help Phoenix walk again, she would find another way, no matter how unconventional or how many doubters stood in their path. The late summer sky darkened prematurely as ominous clouds rolled over the Virginia hills, bringing with them the distant rumble of approaching thunder. Olivia hurried through her evening barn chores, casting worried glances at the gathering storm. Phoenix had been doing well with his new acupuncture treatments, showing subtle improvements in mobility and comfort. Yet something about his behavior tonight set off alarm bells in her mind. The stallion paced his stall restlessly, his ears flicking at every gust of wind that rattled the old barn's weathered boards. The first lightning strike illuminated the barn in harsh white light, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder that seemed to split the sky. Phoenix's reaction was instantaneous and terrifying. He reared up despite his weak hind leg, crashing against the stall walls with such force that wood splintered. His eyes rolled white with blind panic, nostrils flared wide, every muscle in his body rigid with terror. Olivia had never seen such primal fear, not even during their earliest days together. This wasn't just anxiety, this was the resurfacing of a profound trauma buried deep in his past. Another lightning strike sent Phoenix into renewed frenzy. He slammed himself against the stall door, his wounded leg buckling beneath him, but panic driving him back to his feet. Blood appeared where he had scraped himself against the rough wood. Olivia knew that in this state, Phoenix could seriously injure himself, or worse. Without thinking of her own safety, she slipped into the stall, positioning herself in the corner, away from his thrashing hooves. Rain now pounded against the roof, creating a deafening drumbeat that seemed to heighten Phoenix's distress. Sweat foamed on his neck and shoulders as he continued to fight invisible demons. Olivia began speaking softly, her voice barely audible above the storm, but steady and unwavering. She didn't try to approach or restrain him. She simply created a constant, gentle presence in the chaos of his fear. Hours passed. The storm raged on, lightning illuminating the stall in strobed flashes. Olivia remained, her voice growing hoarse but never stopping. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to change. Phoenix's frantic movements became less violent. His breathing, though still rapid, no longer carried the rasping edge of panic. When a particularly close lightning strike boomed overhead, his eyes sought out Olivia rather than rolling in blind terror. Near midnight, the exhausted stallion finally stopped pacing. His body still trembled, his injured leg quivering with fatigue, but the wild fear had subsided. In a moment Olivia would never forget, Phoenix took 3 careful steps toward her and lowered his head. His soft muzzle brushed against her shoulder, not seeking treats or responding to commands, but reaching for comfort, choosing her as his safe harbor in the storm. As the first light of dawn finally broke through the clouds, Olivia found herself sitting on the stall floor, covered in dirt and sweat. Phoenix stood beside her, his head lowered near hers, both of them exhausted, but connected by something profound that hadn't existed before. The storm had unearthed his deepest fears, but in facing them together, they had forged a bond that transcended the conventional relationship between human and horse. For the first time, Phoenix had seen Olivia not as a caretaker, but as a protector, the one constant in a world that had given him every reason to trust nothing and no one. Autumn painted the Virginia countryside in brilliant hues of orange and gold. As Marcus's car crunched up the gravel driveway, Olivia hadn't expected visitors, especially not her brother with his 8-year-old daughter Emma in tow. The little girl had been diagnosed with selective mutism after her mother's death 2 years earlier, speaking only in whispers and only to those she trusted most. Today Emma clutched her favorite stuffed horse, her wide eyes taking in the farm with cautious curiosity. Olivia led them toward the barn, explaining Phoenix's condition in hushed tones to Marcus. She hesitated at the entrance, warning them that the stallion remained unpredictable with strangers. Emma slipped her small hand from her father's grasp and moved forward with quiet determination, stopping just outside Phoenix's stall. The adults watched nervously as the injured horse approached the front of his enclosure, his ears pricked forward with interest rather than flattened in fear. What happened next left Olivia speechless. Phoenix lowered his head to Emma's level, blowing softly through his nostrils as the little girl reached up a tentative hand. No flinching, no retreating. Instead, the horse, who feared human touch, gently pressed his muzzle against Emma's palm. The stallion, who had survived unimaginable cruelty, showed perfect gentleness with this vulnerable child. Something in their broken spirits recognized each other, creating a bridge where words weren't needed. Long after Marcus and Emma departed, Olivia remained in the barn, deep in thought. Phoenix had revealed a side of himself she hadn't witnessed before, an intuitive sensitivity that transcended his trauma. This revelation sparked an idea. If Phoenix could connect so profoundly without conventional communication, perhaps his healing path needed to transcend conventional methods too. The following day, Olivia brought a small portable speaker to the barn. Classical music filled the space, its gentle rhythms flowing around them like water. Phoenix's reaction was subtle but unmistakable. His breathing deepened, his eyes softened, and the perpetual tension in his shoulders eased slightly. When certain melodies played, he seemed particularly receptive, cocking his head as if listening intently. This discovery led to more experimentation. Olivia created a routine that combined music with gentle stretching exercises for his damaged leg. She timed her movements to the rhythm of the melodies, noticing how Phoenix could hold his leg in therapeutic positions longer when distracted by the sounds. The veterinarian had been skeptical of her methods, but couldn't deny the gradual improvements in Phoenix's muscle tone and coordination. As weeks passed, Olivia expanded the therapy. She introduced different textures beneath Phoenix's hooves: soft sand, smooth rubber mats, textured panels, each challenging his proprioception and forcing his damaged nerves to create new pathways. The gentle rippling notes of a piano concerto accompanied their work, seeming to calm his mind while his body struggled with each new challenge. Most remarkable was Phoenix's determination. Despite the pain and difficulty, he tried each exercise with increasing willingness, pushing through discomfort that once would have triggered his flight response. The trust forged during the storm had deepened into partnership. When Emma visited again, bringing drawings of Phoenix that she had made in school, the stallion greeted her like an old friend, and Olivia glimpsed a future far different from the grim prognosis they had been given. A future where broken beings could heal each other in ways science couldn't fully explain. Winter melted into spring, bringing with it changes that seemed almost miraculous to anyone who had seen Phoenix in his earliest days at the farm. The once skeletal stallion now carried a healthy weight, his chestnut coat gleaming in the morning sunlight as he trotted across the paddock with increasing confidence. His damaged leg would never be perfect. A slight hitch remained in his gait, but the improvement defied every grim prediction the specialists had made. The horse who was once deemed beyond help now moved with purpose and growing strength, his body remembering what it felt like to be whole. Even more remarkable was the emergence of Phoenix's true personality, uncovered layer by layer as his pain and fear subsided. Intelligence sparkled in his dark eyes. As he mastered each new therapeutic exercise Olivia introduced, he displayed uncanny problem-solving abilities, figuring out latches and puzzles designed to stimulate his mind during recovery. Most surprising was his playfulness, the way he would toss his head when satisfied with himself, or how he would gently nudge Olivia's pockets for the apple slices he knew were hidden there. Small moments of joy that seemed impossible for an animal who had known such cruelty. Olivia began documenting their sessions, initially just to track his progress. The first video she posted online, Phoenix delicately stepping over a series of raised poles while classical music played in the background, had been meant only for her small circle of equestrian friends, but something about his story resonated with people. The video was shared, then shared again, views climbing into the thousands. Soon Olivia found herself maintaining a dedicated page chronicling Phoenix's rehabilitation journey. With visibility came scrutiny. Veterinary professionals questioned her methods, suggesting that pushing a horse with neurological damage to perform exercises was potentially harmful. Animal welfare advocates worried that Phoenix was being exploited for views and attention. Anonymous comments appeared beneath videos, accusing Olivia of prolonging the suffering of an animal that should have been humanely euthanized months ago. Each criticism stung, making her question her own motivations and methods despite the clear evidence of Phoenix's improvement. Yet for every critic, there were dozens of supporters. Horse owners with their own rehabilitation stories shared advice and encouragement. Physical therapists recognized the careful progression of exercises Olivia had designed. Children with disabilities or their parents wrote touching messages about how Phoenix's determination inspired them. Most validating were the messages from equine professionals who had initially written Phoenix off, now asking detailed questions about the music therapy and sensory integration techniques that had proven so effective. Through it all, Phoenix remained oblivious to his growing fame. His world had expanded from the fearful corner of his stall to include the entire farm. He greeted each morning with pricked ears and bright eyes, eagerly anticipating the day's activities rather than dreading human contact. On especially good days, Olivia would catch him breaking into spontaneous bursts of movement in the pasture. Not quite the powerful gallop of a sound horse, but his own version of joy in motion, unrestrained and authentic. One evening, as sunset bathed the property in golden light, Olivia stood watching Phoenix graze peacefully beside Emma, who now visited regularly to read books aloud to her equine friend. In this quiet moment, Olivia realized that regardless of critics or supporters, what mattered most was written in every line of Phoenix's transformed body and spirit. Against all odds, he had found his rhythm, not the one destiny originally intended for him, but perhaps the one he was always meant to discover. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, its formal tone masking what was essentially a challenge. Sunnyvale Equine Rescue, the largest horse welfare organization in the county, had taken notice of Phoenix's online presence. Their message, polite but pointed, expressed concerns about Olivia's rehabilitation methods and the ethics of pushing a neurologically compromised horse beyond his capabilities. They invited, though it felt more like a summons, Olivia to bring Phoenix to their annual spring fundraiser, where experts could properly evaluate his condition and progress in person. Olivia's finger hovered over the delete button. The implication that she was somehow harming Phoenix or misleading the public about his recovery stung deeply. Yet beneath her indignation, a seed of doubt took root. Was she truly doing what was best for him, or had her determination to prove everyone wrong clouded her judgment? She stared out the window at Phoenix grazing peacefully in the morning light, his movements still imperfect, but undeniably more fluid than anyone had thought possible. Marcus advised against accepting the invitation when she called him later that day. The risks were substantial. Phoenix had never left the safety of the farm since his arrival, except for veterinary visits. His trauma response to strange environments remained unpredictable. The stress of transportation, unfamiliar surroundings, crowds, and other horses could trigger a severe setback, undoing months of careful progress. Even if he remained calm, having his rehabilitation methods scrutinized by skeptical professionals would be daunting for Olivia, who had no formal training beyond her years of experience with horses. Yet as she watched Phoenix that evening during their therapy session, something shifted in her perspective. He moved through his exercises with quiet determination, his eyes soft with trust as they worked together. This wasn't just about defending her methods or proving critics wrong. The fundraiser would attract dozens of potential adopters and donors who made decisions about which horses deserved second chances. How many other Phoenixes were out there, deemed too damaged or difficult to save? How many had been euthanized because rehabilitation seemed impossible or too costly? The following morning, Olivia crafted her response, accepting the invitation. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed, anxiety churning beneath her composed words. The event was only 3 weeks away. Not much time to prepare Phoenix for such a significant challenge. She would need to gradually acclimate him to loading in the trailer without panic, create a portable version of their therapy setup, and develop a demonstration that showcased his progress without overtaxing his still healing body. Preparations consumed every spare moment. Olivia enlisted Emma's help, having the girl play her recorded reading sessions through speakers set up in different locations, helping Phoenix associate the familiar sounds with changing environments. Marcus reluctantly agreed to bring his trailer over on weekends, allowing Phoenix to practice loading and standing quietly for increasing periods. Peterson, who had witnessed Phoenix's remarkable improvement firsthand, offered to accompany them to the event as a professional ally against potential criticism. As the day of the fundraiser approached, Olivia's anxiety peaked. This public appearance could either validate everything they had accomplished together or expose them both to humiliation and doubt. Yet beneath her fear ran a current of quiet determination that matched the steady gaze Phoenix now turned toward new challenges. Whatever happened at Sunnyvale, they would face it as they had faced every obstacle since that rainy day at the auction, together, one careful step at a time. Morning dawned clear and bright on the day of the Sunnyvale fundraiser, sunlight glinting off the pristine white fences of the sprawling equine center. Olivia stood beside the trailer, her hand resting on Phoenix's neck as he took in the unfamiliar surroundings. His muscles were tense beneath her fingers, but his breathing remained steady, a far cry from the panicked, thrashing animal he had once been. The distant sounds of announcements, applause, and horses nickering carried across the grounds. Phoenix's ears flicked toward each new noise, but his eyes remained focused on Olivia, anchoring himself in her familiar presence. The demonstration area had been prepared according to her detailed instructions: a small sound system for their music therapy, specialized textured mats for their sensory work, and a simple arrangement of poles for movement exercises. A sizable crowd had gathered, their expressions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. Olivia recognized several veterinarians who had previously examined Phoenix, including the specialist who had recommended euthanasia as the only humane option. Dr. Peterson stood at the edge of the arena, offering a reassuring nod as Olivia guided Phoenix forward. The music began, the same gentle classical piece that had first captured Phoenix's attention months ago. His ears pricked forward immediately, recognition softening his eyes as Olivia removed the lead rope. For 3 breathless minutes, the crowd watched in silence as horse and human moved in perfect synchronization through their healing dance. Phoenix demonstrated each therapeutic movement with surprising grace, his damaged leg still showing its characteristic hitch, but supporting his weight with newfound strength. The tension in the audience visibly shifted, whispers of amazement replacing doubtful murmurs. Most powerful was the moment Phoenix approached the textured balance platforms, obstacles that had once terrified him. Without hesitation, he placed each hoof deliberately, navigating the challenging surfaces while maintaining his balance and focus. When he completed the final element, a figure-8 pattern around 2 barrels, spontaneous applause erupted from the crowd. Phoenix's ears flicked at the sudden sound, but he remained steady, turning to Olivia as if to confirm he had done well. The university specialist approached afterward, his clinical detachment replaced by genuine wonder as he examined Phoenix's leg and observed his movements. The impossible had happened. Nerve pathways deemed permanently damaged had found new roots, muscles had strengthened, and a horse once sentenced to death had reclaimed his dignity and purpose. Other rehabilitation professionals crowded around, asking questions about Olivia's methods, taking notes, requesting demonstrations of specific techniques. Within weeks, Sunnyvale Equine Rescue had established the Phoenix Protocol, a rehabilitation program specifically for horses previously considered beyond help. Olivia found herself conducting workshops, sharing the combination of music therapy, sensory integration, and gentle progressive exercise that had saved Phoenix. Most rewarding were the videos she received from adopters and rescuers implementing her methods with their own once hopeless cases. One evening, As Phoenix dozed peacefully in his stall, Olivia realized the profound symmetry of their journey. In saving him, she had found healing for wounds she hadn't acknowledged, the loss of her competition career, her sense of purpose, her belief that broken things could be made whole again, though perhaps in different ways than before. Phoenix had given her these gifts, one patient step at a time. If this incredible journey has touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories of remarkable animal transformations. Your support helps us continue sharing these messages of hope and second chances. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, where another amazing story awaits.